Okay, so this is for 6 balls, about 265 grams each. I've got weighed out 28 grams. I'll send the actual recipe for this, but there's 28 grams of salt. I'm using fresh yeast, but you can use like active dried yeast or instant yeast. You can use different settings on the app, which tell you how much the amounts to use. In here, I've weighed out the water, so I'm using like a pizza bowl, and I've put that yeast in already. So there's like, the recipe was a gram. I always tend to put a little bit more. I always think it needs a bit more, and never use less than a gram. Even if the recipe says use 1/4 of a gram, always use a gram. That's my general rule. So if you're making 4 balls, yeah, always use a gram at least. And then I've weighed out that is about 946 grams of flour. So the yeast is dissolved in there, so you can't see it anymore. Give it a couple of minutes. The water shouldn't be cold. It should be like lukewarm. That's how I used to use it. I'm using pink Himalayan salt, which actually isn't ideal. So we'll see actually what happens to this. And then what we're going to do is we've got the yeast in there. Never let the salt mix with the yeast. So it needs to be tempered with flour first. So we're going to put flour in. I tend to put it in like about 4 different amounts. So to begin with, I'll put in like maybe a half, like that. And then I'm just gonna get fingers in, and basically you just want, like, this whole process here is you don't want to over mix it. You just want to get it like the flour into the water basically and start hydrating the flour. So do that, just use like 3 fingers and don't over mix it. That's the key. It's like you just like want it to get all lumpy. So I'll do this in a few parts and I'll come back. Okay, so that's the first mix. That only took like 20 seconds, 30 seconds. And now I'm going to put the rest in. So that's another 1/3 in there now. So I'm just going to do the same process. I haven't put the salt in yet, so just keep mixing. Okay, dry flour gone. That took another 30 seconds, minute. Add half of that and then the salt. Okay, so I've still got like a bit of flour left, which we'll need at the end. And now I've got the flour and the salt on top. So this has now been tempered so the salt won't kill the yeast. So now we'll just mix this again. So still got that left. You can see most of the dry flour is gone. So now it's time to add the last bit, and then we'll get it out and start kneading. Okay, so that's all like incorporated. There's a few dry bits. I'm going to turn this out onto the side now, and then scrape everything with a little dough scraper out. Important to say at this point, I've used 00 pizza flour, so I like 00, but you can use like a mix of type 1, type 0, type 00. Try it. This is also a 65% hydration dough, and it has 3% salt. So you can like get a sense of it basically. The higher the hydration, the harder it is to work with, but the fluffier and softer it will be, and more like, I suppose, growing. This is a 24-hour room temperature proof, and you put all these details into the app and basically it just tells you what to do. So now this is out, I'm going to turn it. This is done. I'm going to turn this out and then knead it for, I'm going to give it like a good 5 minutes straight off the bat, 5-7 minutes. And then we will rest it for 7 minutes and we'll repeat that a few times. Okay, let's try and turn this up. Actually not sure. Can you see that dough? Let me check. You can see that dough. Okay. So get that all out. And it doesn't all have to be mixed at this point. And you can use whatever. Use a bowl. You can do it all on the side, do what you want. I just use this because I find it quite easier to than a bowl to use. Try and get it all out. Otherwise your measurements will be off quite a lot. Okay. That's out, and hopefully you can see this. Let me go that a little bit. There we go. And so just bring it all together and do this. And so this first stretch is really important. It'll actually feel quite cold, this dough, which is a sign that there's not much temperature in it. And the temperature is going to come from the working it and the friction that happens. And so if you're using a pizza mixer, this will get warm quickly and you'll have to stop it quite often so it doesn't overheat, and you don't want to get it above like 20 degrees-ish in the dough itself. So if you've got a thermometer, you can kind of like check it as you go to make sure you're not. But you'll see like my hands are still covered in dough. Try and scrape it off as much as you can, but this will come off over time once you stretch it. Like if it feels wet, just keep going is the answer. And basically you want to work it to a point where you can't really tear it very easily, and it'll feel super wet and shaggy. But I promise you, if you just keep going for, like, I'm going to do this for 5 minutes at least. This first one's probably the most important. Some people actually let the flour rest before they do this first one for like 30 minutes to try and hydrate the dough, the flour basically, and the water. However, I've kind of done this quite a few times, and with this recipe especially, like a room temperature one, and when you're running in like small amounts of yeast, so like a gram, I actually find that it doesn't get as much proving in it and volume. So that's just going to come from the fact that you don't work it enough. And so now is the time to like get it up to temperature for a solid like 5 minutes. So I'm just going to pause it whilst I do this. So basically you want to be starting to get this feeling. It should be wet and shaggy, and you should start to see you can like really like push it out, turn it around, stretch it out, turn it like this, basically repeatedly. Okay, so you see that's really started coming together. It's not smooth, but it's smoother, and you see most of the stuff's not now sticking to my hand. I scraped it off like once, but it's no longer sticking. You can also feel in here that there is like heat generating, and that's what like the gluten developing. So just keep this. This is now 7 minutes, and it's looking like that. So just keep going, and then I do a bit of this, like get some of that going in, just to help like get going. You'll feel it go quite firm at some point, and anytime you're stretching dough, just stop when it gets too firm. So now you can see like that's quite firm. I can't tear it very easily, so don't stop if you can still like rip it apart quite easily. Keep going until about this point, and you'll just start to feel a little bit of temperature happening. And then you want to rest it for about the same amount of time as you ball it each time. So just like use the friction in the sides, just try and ball it together. Use your hands like that, and fucking hell, I'm out of breath. You can actually see there's a little ball develop there, and that means it's time to stop. So I'm just gonna cover that with a bolt. 7 minutes ish, a bit longer if you want, and do this 3 more times. So that is about 7 minutes, and you can just scrape it off, and you can see it's a little bit smoother. And so now it's just repeat again for pretty much until it gets like warm, you start feeling heat, and then it gets quite hard to stretch. So like this could be like 3-4 minutes, maybe less, but you do want to keep continuing to get that like big stretch in and opening it up. Get it's like warm as you can. And I'll pause it there and I'll let you know when I've done about how many minutes I've done. Did you not just have to sit there and watch an entire discussion with Graham? You're not sure? Okay, anyway. That's had like 10 minutes, I think, actually, so maybe a bit longer because I forgot about it. Super smooth. it probably needs not much more of a knead, to be honest. Like, it's super smooth now. Actually, I'm just gonna give it one more like blast like this, and rather than stretch it, just like wait till it gets. Give it one more like big stretch. This will probably just be a couple of minutes, this one, and then again a 5-minute rest, and then I will just ball it. So now just give it some of this. That's had like just a couple of minutes there. So you see it's now not really dropping, so that's ready for its final prove, and then just a quick ball. So at the moment you can see it's kind of smooth, but it's not like smooth all over. There's still a little bit few rough bits where which just happened from the stretching that I just did now. So what you want is like a super smooth dough, and you can see it's like bouncing back. That's pretty much ready. So I'm just going to leave it for a few more minutes and then ball it. Right, actually pretty done. So last thing to do before I like to bulk prove it. So basically put it in a bowl until about 2 or 3 hours, maybe 4 hours before you want to start cooking them. And then what I'll do is tomorrow, so this is 24 hours. So about lunchtime tomorrow, I will like weigh it into 265 gram balls, reball them, put them in everything. So there we go. That's a nice, super smooth ball. And so we're gonna actually, firstly, olive oil, just a tiny bit in the bottom, it's hardly anything, and then drop it in. And I like to just put a little bit on top. A lot of people don't like this, but I just find it keeps it a little, like 3 or 4 drops. So you can see, looks like that. I just find it stops it from like completely like drying out, gives it a nice smooth shine. Some people put it in the recipe, but I actually find it's not as nice. So that goes on like that, and cling film, like super tight. You don't want really any air escaping. And so the temperature in here is 18.9. So I put this recipe based on the temperature, on a room temperature proof of 18 degrees on average, what it'll have over the next 24 hours. What I'm going to do is actually put this in a little bit of sunlight, so it'll probably be a lot warmer than that to begin with. That just kind of gets it really going. Yes! Zach's here, yes, I know. So 2 lots of cling film. That is all done. So all there. Yeah. Hello. Hello, Trico. Oh, there's there, Zach.
It's mine.
It is your lunch. All right, and that's that. See you in 24 hours.